Are you the parent of a college student? Maybe you're an Aggie parent, and you were smart enough and financially capable enough to buy an investment property for your son or daughter to live in while they attended the university. In doing so, you likely made or saved thousands of dollars. Congratulations. But now, as your son approaches graduation, you're wondering, what do I do with this property? Do I turn it into a pure investment? Do I sell it? Or maybe this thing called a 1031 exchange. Well, guys, in today's video, we're going to cover the framework that helps you make that decision. We will help you figure out which of those three paths are best for you. And we're covering that on this channel, Investing in Bryan-College Station, because this channel is all about growing your wealth through real estate. And in this case, that means making a tough decision of what to do with that property now that it's served its purpose, which of course was to provide a home for your son or daughter while they attended school. So let's jump in, but first we're going to start off by talking about the life cycle of you, a college parent. I'm going to assume that you bought this property about 3 to 5 years ago. I'm going to assume that when you bought it, the intent was to avoid throwing away money in rent, which is a great decision. But I'm also going to assume that you didn't really have a plan for owning it after your son or daughter graduated. And I'm going to assume that you've enjoyed some appreciation. Here in Bryan-College Station, we average about 4.96% year-over-year appreciation. So you could be looking at $50,000 to $100,000 worth of equity. So the big question is, what do you do with this property with all that equity locked up in it? And in most cases, the initial thought is to sell it. So let's start there. All right, so the property has done what it's supposed to do. It provided a great home for your son or daughter. Maybe it's time to tap into some of that equity. And I get it, there's some really good reasons to sell. Two of the ones that are top of mind are, one, maybe you don't want to own a property that's not near your home, right? It's too far from home. Or two, maybe you want to tap into that equity. Maybe you've got a better use of those funds, like paying down student loans. That makes sense. But if you do sell, keep in mind, you're likely going to be paying a good chunk of change to Uncle Sam through capital gains tax. And two, well, you're killing the golden goose, this thing that made you all that money. Now you're just going to sell it off? I don't know. Maybe selling's not the right option. All right, so we don't want to pay taxes and we don't want to kill the golden goose. So we're thinking maybe we'll keep this as a pure investment. Well, before we pull the trigger on that, I want you to run an analysis. It's called return on equity. Now, in the description below, I'll have a link. You can get the PDF that breaks down the steps of this. So I'll go over the wave top explanation of a return on equity analysis. The way that I want you to run this is look at how much money you would walk away with after you sold the property. That, of course, is sale price minus the remaining principal balance, minus the cost of the sale. That is your quote unquote profit, what you walk away with. In this case, let's assume that's about $50,000. $50,000, remember that number. Now we're going to look at how much the property makes us. First thing would be cash flow. Let's look at how much income it could produce, what the market rents are, and subtract all the expenses to include the mortgage, the tax, the insurance, the maintenance, the vacancies, everything. What's left over is your monthly cash flow. Multiply that times 12 to get your yearly cash flow. Let's assume that's about $1,000. Now we're going to look at the equity growth that this property creates. So equity growth is going to be appreciation and principal paydown. Let's assume that we run those numbers, it comes up to about $14,000. So now we're making $15,000 on a $50,000 equity, which of course is a 30% return on your investment. So in this analysis, we would have to have an investment opportunity better than 30% ROI for us to sell the property. If you do that math and your return on your equity is 10% or less, it might make sense to sell it. Of course, if you're going to keep the property, you are now turning into a landlord with someone living there beside your son or daughter, and you're going to have to take on the challenge of figuring out whether you want to self-manage or hire a property manager. Here at Schwartz Realty Group, we pride ourselves in helping people maximize their ROI through self-management. So reach out to us and we will lay out the groundwork of how you can effectively self-manage and maximize your ROI. That brings us to our final decision. Should you reinvest that money through a tax-deferred 1031 exchange? And what does that even mean? let's define what a 1031 exchange is. Then let's talk about whether it's right for you. And finally, let's talk about one of the biggest hurdles you have to overcome when doing a 1031 exchange. For starters, a 1031 exchange is the deferment of capital gains tax through a like-kind exchange, which is just IRS jargon for you don't pay capital gains tax, at least for now, as long as you sell a piece of real estate and buy another piece of real estate. So to answer your question, no, you can't sell real estate and buy stocks. You'd have to pay tax. And no, the capital gains tax isn't completely gone, it's deferred. You're kicking the can down the road. Okay, so that's what a 1031 is. When is it right for you? When I work with clients, I recommend that they check all three of these boxes to determine if it's right for them. For starters, you've run your return on equity analysis and you've determined that there are other assets that will provide you a better ROI. In that case, maybe you want a 1031 exchange. Second, you like the idea of being a real estate investor. You want to go further down the real estate investor rabbit hole. You want to exchange a condo for a duplex. Those are all reasons to continue to do a 1031 exchange. But if you don't want to be a real estate investor, then don't 1031 exchange. And then three, most importantly, you don't want to pay Uncle Sam. You see, you don't like the idea of giving Uncle Sam your money. You'd rather keep it invested, allowing it to compound over time, growing your wealth. If all three of those boxes are checked, then you should probably consider doing a 1031 exchange. But you need to watch out for this major gotcha, and that's the timeline. You see, to do a 1031 exchange, you have to identify that replacement property within 45 days of the sale of your first property. And then you have to close on that property within 180 days of the sale of that first property, meaning you only have 6 months to identify and close on a replacement property. And that timeline, believe it or not, has resulted in all kinds of investors overpaying for the second property. The remedy for that is to work with a real estate team who can both help you sell the current property and identify the replacement in the appropriate timeline. And Schwartz Realty Group is here to help you out with that. If you want to work with us, all our contact information is in the description below. Let's recap real quick what just happened. You purchased a real estate investment opportunity for your son or daughter to live in while they attend a university like Texas A&M. You grew your wealth. You avoided throwing away money in rent. You now have to make a decision of whether you want to sell, keep, or 1031 exchange that property. In either case, you made an excellent decision, and for that, I am giving you a thumbs up. If you also want to give me a thumbs up, scroll down. There's a thumbs up button. Click on it. I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you want more investing advice, particularly about growing your wealth here in Bryan-College Station, then hit the subscribe button. I drop a new video every single week. The only request I have, until next week, you take it easy.